Back to school, back to school to prove to daddy that I'm not a fool.
Can you keep going? Do you know all the words to that, Josh?
I think that's it. He's with his backpack waiting for the bus. And I think the bus just drives by, maybe? I'm not.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. All I can
And is it
think
Chris
of,
Farley's the bus driver?
yeah, all I can think of is we're all now dumber because of that whole thing.
Yeah.
But welcome, pretty good parents, to the back to school episode because here in the U.S. it's school time. Kids
Oh,
are going
yeah.
back to school.
For all our international
Yeah,
listeners.
yeah. So what do we? Actually, do we want to recap
Well,
our
yeah,
bribery?
it's been a little bit
Yeah.
for us, not for the listener. Well, for the listener too, but yeah, a recap of what was it?
Basically, parents that like to bribe their kids.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
how to motivate, but then
Yeah.
we really for a listener, it
Mm-hmm.
was a listener request, right? What to do with bribing if you've been doing it, how to get out of it. Well, the recap we talked about one example that you had given that I felt like actually was appropriate. And I wouldn't say was bribery as much it was incentivizing.
Right.
And then kind of differentiated between like unhealthy bribery that enables and kind of creates a trap versus incentivizing kind of behavior that tends to move forward and progress them. And
Yeah.
then you probably had a story of doing it wrong. But what I remember is you doing it right this time.
Oh, I appreciate that, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, listener, go back to listen to the bribery one. The one time Dan did something right. But I believe you had a nice quote, something, I believe in your ability to overcome adversity. Basically is sticking out as basically just, talking your kid through it versus just instantly going to the bribery.
Yeah. Instead of rescuing them from
The
their
rest with the bribery,
situation,
right?
giving
So,
them giving that sense of like confidence of what pushing through that emotional challenge is and feels like versus just our discomfort with their emotional discomfort and trying to rescue them from that. The wise parenting is what's it look like to push through that and then giving them that confidence. Like you have what it takes. You've done this before. It's uncomfortable or challenging, but I believe in you is a better motivator than I'll give you this if you do it.
yeah.
That could work also, but yeah.
Well, if you want to go hear more, listen to the bribery episode. And so today we're talking back to school. Our kids went back to school. This is day number 2.
Yeah.
So we're in the middle of it. Let's just kind of, we'll go with our usual format for the listener, the what and the why and the how.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the what that's relevant, I feel like, is all the symptoms or kind of overflow of back to school, the amount of planning and consideration and the increased hustle from probably for most of us a more mild summer routine immediately kicks into like overdrive with what feels like constant emails from like every teacher. Like makes me think I don't know any of my kids' teachers at all because I just keep getting bombarded with like class updates and they give me the whole outline over the entire year. On one hand, I appreciate that on one hand. The other hand, I'm like, I am not going to retain any of this, what you're teaching in social studies this entire semester. So yeah, but you're getting bombarded with information. So are the kids. So the what is, how do we, well, we're stressed and busy and we want to make sure we know what to do with that. So that's the what. The why. Well, we want to be good parents. We want to be pretty good parents. We want our kids to be thriving and as healthy as possible, and we want to be as good of parents as we can. And so that's why we're going to talk about the how, what to be prepared for, and what to be planning ahead, and then how to navigate those situations ourselves and our best for our kids.
yeah. Can I throw in one more what
Yeah,
to tackle is just maybe possibly anxiety of kids.
for sure.
I think especially with kids, going to new schools or new grades and things like that, getting to see it firsthand with our own kids or friends,
Yeah.
and going back to when I was a kid, There's definitely some anxiety there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, depending on it, I mean, we both have a middle schooler and and a high schooler, and elementary in all 3, right? Or Judd's not in high school yet.
Yeah.
But middle school is super tough, awkward, especially that 6th grade. You go from this, like, really catered, nice, like, elementary experience to you feel like a pack of wolves now at the middle school level. Less oversight, less supervision, fend for yourself. And I mean, I think the anxiety for the parents is high too. Like, there are
Mhm.
a lot of parents that because they care deeply about their kids and their well-being, they have a lot of anxiety about what the kids are going to face and is it going well. And we want to be aware that, and we talking about maybe like the how is how important it is that we're managing our own anxiety, that we're not like flooding them or giving off that energy uh, that they don't really need from us in our own anxiety about how they're doing. But yeah, the kids, the students' anxiety about all the new stuff, the obvious teachers' anxiety. I work with a lot of teachers, and they are just as stressed, if not more stressed, than the students or the parents because they oftentimes have kids themselves, and they're feeling, uh, that pressure to be prepared and to memorize all these new names and get their curriculum dialed in. So there's a lot of stress in the classroom, in home, and just the students. So everyone's dealing with that like increased level of anticipation and slightly on edge.
Mhm.
So managing that is going to be a huge part of what we talk about today of like the how.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know for some people, just well, we've experienced it too, but getting kids out the door that just may or may not wanna go to school and all the ups and downs of that and,
Yeah.
who's in the class, who's not in the class, best friend's not in my class, I'm so upset or, possible dealing with bullies or anticipation of am I gonna get bullied? There's just so many things, right?
Yeah. Like lunch table drama. Who's
Mhm.
at your table? Did you get included or excluded?
Mhm.
I feel like we could do a whole podcast on just like the morning routine and getting out the door. There's so many like stressful elements to that that parents, not surprisingly, also struggle because they oftentimes have their own day to get ready for. And so it's just compiled or compounded in that situation. So learning how to set realistic expectations, which is what we're going to talk about, and then intentions, like who do you want to be in this space? How do you want to show up in these predictable scenarios where it's like the best planning you could do still comes down to, did so and so get the right stuff in the backpack? Did they eat? And is the bus here, or are we leaving out the door on time?
Mhm.
That clock urgency creates anxiety for most people. And so just knowing how do you want to manage that versus just reacting every time, every morning, like, "Yeah, I don't understand. We set the alarm and why do they still suck?" Like, well, why haven't you updated? Like, this is the way it goes. Why aren't you, don't you have a better plan of how you want to show up if they're doing their predictable thing,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's dive in.
Yeah. So let's talk about the different factors that they're likely to face. Um, and kind of explain the more of the how. So, you alluded to anxiety. I would add, yeah, so increased stress, physically tired, mentally tired.
Mhm.
Um, there's insecurity about, am I going to do the right thing? Am I going to make the right friends? Am I smart enough for this class? Am I going to get made fun of? Do my new clothes look dumb? A million different things that can go through a kid's head about like what they're anticipating and not knowing. So there's a lot of stress. It manifests in usually tiredness. And so like mentally tired, physically tired, emotionally tired, and understanding what happens to ourselves and our kids when we're emotionally and physically and mentally tired. We're usually irritated. When we're irritated, we're usually disrespectful. And so instead of misconstruing or misunderstanding like this exhausted kind of behavior as disrespectful, it's important to be like, hey, they're going to be tired. They're going to be depleted. They've been managing like all kinds of stress during their day. And at home, they finally get to like unwind and be themselves. And out comes maybe this stored up stuff from their day. The key is to not be offended and
Mhm.
not be overly focused on the disrespectful behavior, which is exactly what happened yesterday for me with my daughter, who was feeling the tension of like the first day of school, and she was not nice, and I had done nothing provoking, nothing wrong.
Right.
Um, we talked about it later in the day. She actually sent me a text saying, "Sorry for my attitude this morning. I just saw this text now. Thank you. I just wished her like a good day." And she did say like, "Hey, when I'm upset and I'm feeling frustrated or I'm disrespectful, it'd be helpful if you don't make this kind of noise and face." And it's like, ugh, which is what I did. I was being nice. We were trying to take a picture, and she's being a little shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh God, I don't want to deal with that."
Noise and
The
face.
noise and then the face of like, it
Yeah.
looks like you're pooping or disgusted by something. And I said, you're right. What could you do also? I will not make noises or faces. I can give you that space if it looks like you're obviously stressed. And what can you do? Can we have a safe word? Can you say a word? And I think she said pickle. You say pickle, I'll leave you the hell alone.
Mhm.
And if you say pickle, you're likely to do that versus be mean to me. And if what's easy as the parent is to be offended, disrespected, and we're stressed already too. So it's an easy poke that usually leads to like consequences or attitude, or we heighten the situation by us responding to it.
Mhm.
So understanding if they're stressed, they're not going to be their best. And most kids, when they're stressed, take it out on their parents, which is unfair, but that's the way it goes. So when
Right.
we adjust expectations to say they're probably going to be more disrespectful than you'd like, some snotty, reactive, because they're stressed, they're worried, and all of that is overwhelming their system. Instead, try not to take it personal and say, "I can understand that you're stressed." Well, yeah, I am. They fire back more stuff.
Mhm.
Don't get, just practice not being hurt and give them enough space and time. Really, it's like get through the whole day or the first week without highlighting or hovering over like one or two things they said or did. Just give them some grace. Now,
Mhm.
if it boils over into something bigger that needs to be addressed, okay, sure. But if it's like the morning or if it's the evening time, adjusting expectations is they're going to be tired, they're going to be stressed. When they're tired and stressed, they're irritable, and that behavior can look like disrespect and feels like disrespect to the parent. Our goal is to not react to that. We can respond to it, or we can absorb it and game plan it later, but the reaction is the trigger reaction that I was describing. Like I made the face. Some parents might do worse. It's like, don't talk to me that way, I'm here doing this for you, and like, you should be appreciative of that.
Mhm.
There's no lecture opportunity here, before school or after school, like the first week of school. This is, let's get through it. Let's be understanding. Let's lower expectations and give them some grace and some space because they're on edge.
Mhm.
So, uh, tiring and stress, being tired and being stressed lead to irritability, and that typically leads to disrespectful behavior. Don't pull just your consequence card out right away. Like, give them some grace, give them some space. Hey, you're probably feeling it. I know I'm feeling it. Can we just focus on getting to bed, and we'll see how tomorrow goes? And if it's a big issue, again, the disrespect was, very sizable, wait till the weekend and say, "Hey, let's talk about this week. It was a big week. You said some things, you did some things. I feel like we need to talk about it and figure out how to do that differently next time versus just dole out consequences."
Yeah.
So adjusting expectations is like the bigger part for the parent. Be realistic.
Well, and I feel like it's almost a theme that we've talked about a lot, just adjusting expectations all the time, right?
Yes.
But I think obviously this week, the first couple days in the week, in particular, right? Just really allowing your kids to give them space. I love that. And I would say just one thing to tack on there. I know we're not a nutrition podcast or a health podcast, but no, we can because pretty good parents should really
No,
do all
we
the
know enough.
things for the kids.
Yeah.
Uh, I feel like for my kids, it's often due to lack of food,
Yeah.
specifically protein. uh, like my daughter, I can't get her to eat protein to save her life. And, you read all these studies about how important protein is. And, well, it's just a good healthy diet in general, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, what are your thoughts there about sort of looking at that first couple days, that first week, and things like that? Being okay, maybe we need to adjust, be eating better in the morning, getting more food, more snacks throughout the day.
Yeah.
So for example, my boys are in middle school. The bus picks them up at 6:58 in the morning, which to me is so early,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's
It's
crazy.
really
And then
unfair.
Judd's playing football, and so he doesn't get back till 5. I mean, that's a pretty long, and it's a 2.5 hour practice after school.
Yeah.
It's a pretty long day. And if you're not totally prepared, nutrition wise and hydration wise and all that stuff,
Yeah.
I feel like it's real easy, like you said, being tired and the irritability comes in and, the
Yeah, and they get in
attitude
the car,
changes
you're
and
like, "How was your day? Tell me about it."
yeah.
And we start prying for all this stuff, and they're, like, dying of thirst
Yeah,
or food, and it's like, "Leave me alone." And then we get offended, "Why
right.
don't you tell me?" Versus they're gonna be tired, they're gonna be hungry. Snacks are in the car, water bottle is, like, cold and ready for them, so as soon as they get in, they have something to eat and something to drink.
Mhm.
And then give them some time to recover. They listened all day long, they don't need to listen to the parent give more advice or lectures, and they don't really want to be asked a lot of questions.
Right.
So it takes a lot of discipline to be understanding with that. But I think um, I mean, agree with you that the nutritional focus is a great idea. It can be difficult all at once to immediately go from summer mode to school mode, and then also change diet.
Mhm.
So uh, I mean, it depends on, I guess, your family trends and practices, but I would say maybe a slower introduction. Maybe still some, I gotta sneeze.
There we go.
Excuse me. Maybe some changes or implement. We're going to do like smoothies plus like maybe one of your favorite things, and just slowly move into that. But if you can pull it off and your kids are fine with it, I would say, yeah, is the healthier the better. Ideally, you start a week before school, and so it's like, hey, we're going to start early, so it's not all happening at the same time.
Mhm.
But I think sleep is the biggest. I think sleep's the most important, and then nutrition, and then it's just the overall parenting, like expectations and like grace that you're giving the kid, but making sure they're getting enough sleep so they're going to go to bed way earlier than they're used to for their summer routine. They're probably not going to pop out of bed excited, and probably pull them out of bed.
Mhm.
And so being understanding of that, and then having a breakfast that they're going to eat is really important. If it's just like, dad's like overnight oats idea, it's like the kid just looks at it and throws up.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not the week to push that routine, but yeah, I
Right.
think that's huge. Um, the it's going to be a hustle for everybody. So adjusting the expectations is to not be shocked by it.
Mhm.
Like, we're going to be busier than we think. We should probably say no to things that aren't absolutely essential or vital for the first few weeks, because there's additional meetings. There's the team meet the coach meetings. That's what the season's going to be like. There's forms to sign. You're getting bombarded with emails like, this is what we're going to cover this whole semester. You're like, it's just total overload. And to say no to something that's not vital or that any way like drains you is a really good idea, especially for the first few weeks. And just treat it
Yeah.
like, we're going to be flooded in a matter of days anyways. Let's not do anything extra. Build in some like downtime. Now, if social activities restore you or fill you back up, then yeah, you do it. Otherwise, be thinking like, we're going to be overwhelmed and stressed. Someone's probably going to get sick, especially the younger kids
Mhm.
in those first few weeks and months. So you like expect also sickness in the home. It's really tough. It's a big hustle and stressful. And so expecting that sets you up to be better versus like, parents like, well, fingers crossed this year's going to be different. And I'm like, nope, that's a losing formula.
Right.
Plan for it to be the way it's always been, and then figure out how you want to show up in that space, and then plan accordingly versus this idealistic, like, no one's getting sick this year. we're all going to eat this way and we're all going to get up and have good attitudes. It's going to be a good year, guys. Then the cheerleader is pissed off like day two
Yeah.
because no one's feeling it. So, but instead say, I'll be optimistic, but I'm expecting and planning on maybe some bad attitudes and some exhaustion. And then they're going to probably be irritable and snappy with me.
Mhm.
And I want to be able to let that stuff roll off my back and help them and address their bad attitude maybe at another time in our de escalation talks. It's always like timing is huge. When they can hear it and absorb it is the time to talk about it, not when in the moment when they're already flooded and overwhelmed.
Right.
And same with us. If we're not in a good calm place, it's not going to work for us to be, having a breakthrough conversation with them.
Yeah. And I'm so guilty of that when any of the kids I see 'em first thing, I ask a million questions and just start diving in and prodding and yeah, I'm sure they hate it.
Especially at the end of the day
Yeah.
when they've already listened all day to stuff they probably don't like.
Yeah.
And they're calculating these social things in and out. And now they're like, oh, phew, I'm done. Give me a snack and I'm going to unwind. And like mom or dad's just peppering them with questions and prying.
Mhm.
And if, stereotypically, if it's a boy, you're going to get one word answers or grunts. And if it's a girl, you might be like uncorking like a lot more emotional response than you're ready for.
Mhm.
So like, know your kids and like be anticipating like what's their likely response and don't push them. Like let them share it and let it come out naturally. Sometimes with boys it won't come out until you do kind of pry a little bit or when they're ready. But if the intention is not to push, let it kind of come out naturally. You don't ask them 15 questions when you pick them up or that night when they're even more tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple, simple questions like overall, did it feel like, a good day or an open-ended question like, what did you expect it to be and did it kind of match that? But they're probably going to not want to talk.
Yeah.
And you're like, but I want to know, I want to make sure they're going to be okay. How was your teacher? And did you, see your friends or was anyone bullying you? And, but
I always go right to who did you have lunch with, and that probably creates more anxiety. Well, who did I have lunch with? Was I at the cool table? Was I not? All this stuff,
yeah, why is dad so
I don't know.
concerned about the
Yeah.
table I'm at? Should I be?
Should I be?
Yeah,
Yeah.
our energy can overflow, obviously, and land on them and not help. So to act like everything's going to be fine. I believe in you. You've got this. It's normal for you to be stressed. I mean, it was one of my tips of setting intention is like the importance of normalizing it. Like, hey, it's a new school or it's a new year. There are new kids. Some kids left. People change. Um, People can come back after a summer and look very different and act very different. And so normalizing all that stress and adjustment to say like it's okay that you're tired. It's okay that you don't maybe know where you're going to really fit in right now. Give yourself some time to like adjust. Like that's normal.
Mhm.
A new job for an adult is a big adjustment. Like I don't know any of these faces. I don't know the culture or the expectation. Like, does everyone really start working at 8 or is it like a soft start?
Mhm.
If I show up at like 7:55, am I a weirdo or am I 8 o'clock, like already expected to be plowing through my stuff? You don't know until you're there and like the anticipation and the imaginary thinking of how it's going to be. Kids do that obviously just as much as adults do. And like, well, they're imagining, showing up at school and they're naked,
Yeah.
like the crazy dream of like it being ill prepared for something in life. Like they're thinking too, like, am I going to get laughed at? Do I know this? Am I going to get called on and feel embarrassed? So to normalize it and say, I have stress when I start new things. It's hard not to because it's not familiar yet to me. And so I want you to know that if you're worried at all about it, like, don't freak out. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. Let's just trust that you have common sense and you have support and you have a good track record of like navigating this. Like, you've
Mhm.
overcome these things before. So, that last podcast talking about how to motivate and instill confidence is belief statements in our kids. Like, I know you have this in you. I know you can overcome this. And it is stressful and it's tiring to learn new things. And look at your schedule and go around and walk around a school you've never been in or in a new wing of your school you haven't seen. Like,
Mhm.
it's okay for that to be stressful.
Yeah.
So, like, the normalizing is really important. Asking good opening questions is another way to like how you might want to show up. So if you want to just pepper them, you're going to think, all right, you get, let's say 2 to 3 max. And if they aren't engaged, then you just say, hey, it looks like you're tired. I imagine you had a long day and you'd like for me to leave you alone. If there's anything you'd like to share with me now or later, like I'm available, but I'm going to give you some space. Uh, that's a really common statement I would encourage for after school interactions. And then if your kid is talkative and wants to share, absolutely. If they're not, one or two, and then back off and then check in with them later, maybe later that night or that weekend. Show that you care, but it just doesn't work to pressurize them.
Right. So, open-ended questions after school.
Normalize the stress.
Yeah.
Um, eh, Reassure them that you believe in them, that they have what it takes to get through this, that most likely their friends and even their teachers are also a little overwhelmed in this way, getting to know new faces and names and new routines. Like,
Mhm.
everyone's in the same boat. You're not alone. Like, you just don't see it. You don't hear their thoughts. You just see them walking down the hall or sitting in class and they look fine. They're probably like spinning on stuff like you are as well.
Yeah.
So that's the normalizing. Don't pry too much.
So,
Um,
like, well, if you have teenage boys, you don't ask them like, "Did you get your first boner like in class today?" And all of those things.
well,
When do you want to ask those
you
questions?
might want to do that.
So,
I mean, you'd catch them off guard, and you'd probably like make them laugh or freak them out, and that could be like an interesting door to
but
go
I
through.
think those are the things, right? That I think kids were probably terrified of, right?
Yeah,
And some of those physiological things happening to your body and this and that, and
yeah.
so
If instead of putting the pressure on them, you could open the conversation by disclosing something from your childhood, not
yeah.
necessarily your experience, but it could be. But you could say, "Hey, I remember, in 6th grade, this kid Mark, like he would wear sweats every day, and he was getting boners like pretty much every day with sweats on, and so everyone could see it, and the girls were grossed out, and the guys were like, 'What's wrong with you, Mark? Like, tuck that thing away.'"
Yeah.
Obviously it's an awkward scenario to be in and he needs a little bit of coaching and direction and to normalize like, well, you can't control it sometimes, especially at this age where the hormones are
Yeah.
new and things are kind of ramping up, no pun intended.
Mhm. Yeah,
It
well
takes
played.
oh,
Mhm.
good boner play. It takes it's important to normalize it and then say, let's talk about some strategies
Yeah.
versus it be this like inappropriate, like unavoid or inappropriate conversation you can't have. They're better off talking about it, even if it's awkward, than not talking about it at all.
Right.
And it's not just like that. It's like you like this girl, or you're trying to figure out how to like strike up this like conversation with this maybe a new friend you want to have, and you're intimidated. Share your own experience from your childhood or something from your childhood to kind of open that door, so it's not such a pressurized spotlight on them and their day. That's that makes it easy for them to shut down, but if you invite them into a conversation about someone or something else that might correlate or parallel their experience, it's a lot easier for them to be like, "What? What happened? Yeah, Mark, he I guess all he wore is sweats, and apparently he's getting a boner every day because he was quickly nicknamed Boner." And I just, that happens. So like, have you seen that in your classroom? And
Mhm.
have you experienced that as, the untimely erection, like that you can't always control? Normalize it, very gently ask, and then, see where it goes. If they don't participate, you can always give some advice that's not too preachy and just like, well, you know, hopefully, if you or one of your friends was in a situation like that, they felt comfortable asking or kind of game planning that, especially if it kept occurring, because it's not abnormal. It's not weird. It's, physiologically appropriate. And as our bodies are changing, So if you find yourself in that situation, please don't hesitate because I've been there. I've dealt with that.
Mhm.
It can be awkward, but it doesn't need to be awkward. You can have that conversation without them actually participating and sharing their story. If they looked uncomfortable or refused, it's kind of a one-way conversation, but it's not a lecture. It's more of a indirect lecture by offering availability.
Yeah. Well, and I just feel like there's so much going on there, and probably same for girls with periods, right? And all those different changes going on, and
Yeah,
I mean, I remember in middle school, I was at watching our friend's basketball game, and a girl got her period, and Friday night she stood up and realized and sat down and freaked out and just had a jacket over her
yeah,
and froze the entire time and everybody left the bleachers. And I feel like at least maybe now I had older sisters, so I
yeah,
kind of knew about it, but my buddies had no idea,
yeah,
and they're learning so much and there's so much thrown at them.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, just always kind of thinking like as parents, how can we sort of teach and soften the blow when
yeah.
they're going to find these things out.
Ideally, you do it ahead of time. For the girl, it's the probably the mom talking to the daughter about like what her body's gonna be going through and what that experience is like, and exploring all different kind of like plans so that we can have in place when that were to occur, and then share a story like to normalize like how unexpected it can be and how
Mhm.
uncomfortable it can be. you know Kids might laugh or might freak out, but it's obviously like very normal physiologically. And just to talk about that beforehand, even though it's awkward and makes them uncomfortable, that's still better than nothing and then freaking out and worrying about if that were to occur or it has happened, what do I do? Yeah, so a longer runway with some of those things with our kids and being uh, more forthcoming, even though it's awkward for us. Like it's better. It's always better to talk about these things than for them to figure out on their own or learn from their friends.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean they're always going to listen to us and it's going to be absorbed well. But my belief system is I'd rather them hear it from me and talk about it with me so I know what they're hearing at least the first time, and they know that they can talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Like, here are all the bad words, and here are all the sex things that you might encounter at school. Let's talk about it so you know what's going on, so you don't feel like you're out of the loop. And if you're confused, I want you to feel comfortable. You can ask me those things
Mhm.
because yeah, because some kids, not only are their bodies changing, but they're going to be encountering things they haven't seen or been around before, and it spreads quickly in the school setting. I'm a big fan of my kids knowing that from us and from me than from their friends, which is, a very unreliable source of information.
Right.
So talk early and often about like kind of those school age things so they feel equipped and they know you're available for those kind of conversations.
Yeah. But just don't throw it at them right when they get off the bus.
Yeah. Did you get a boner today?
Yeah. How many boners do you
Yeah.
get?
You see any periods out there? Nope. All right. Well, we'll talk later. I guess you're hungry.
Alright, alright. Yeah.
So, the adjusting expectations to be realistic. You're going to be tired. They're going to be tired. It's new. People are going to be irritable. Go to bed earlier. Don't do a ton of new changes. Give a little, give pockets of reprieve. Say no or have some open weekends if you can, just because you know you're going to need more time to recover. Normalize it.
Yes, all I could think about is our weekend coming up is packed. Like, we're gonna get home at 10 p.m. on Sunday night,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, "What are we doing first weekend after school?
Yeah.
It's
You
gonna be
guys are screwed.
miserable." Yeah,
You're
it's
screwed.
horrible.
That's
Bad timing.
normal, but if you can adjust it, or if nothing else, be very gracious and anticipate the meltdowns, the
Mhm.
parents' meltdowns, and the kids' meltdowns, because it's likely to happen. That's the first week. There's just a million things calculating, and then you go into a busy weekend, and then you hit it hard Monday morning.
Mhm.
It's going to be stressful, and so just say, "Hey guys, just low expectations. We got to do our work. We got to do our stuff, but let's get through the next few weeks." And then if you can adjust your schedule and say no to some things or take something off, I think it's a great idea. You know, most parents commit to things they feel like they have to do, and so that's the conundrum. But
Mhm. Nice.
um, so adjusting expectation to be realistic. Uh, the other part to that is imagining how do you want to show up in those spaces. So how do you want to? What intentions do you want to set? Um, Demeanor, attitude. One question, five questions. When do you back off? How do you practice not being offended? How do you want to respond when your kid is disrespectful to you? It's important to think that through and actually have some kind of plan for that. Otherwise, we are likely as parents to react poorly as well because we're also, again, we've calculated a bunch. We're getting less sleep and we're worried. And the last thing we want to deal with disrespect. And so it's easy for us to like slip into a reactive parent mode versus a intentional proactive one. And so setting that intention of like I want to be kind and gracious and not be offended. Right. So that would have been yesterday for me saying, hey, it's first day for my daughter's
Mhm.
sophomore year in high school. She's probably going to be stressed and thinking about a million things while she gets ready. Don't be offended when she's disrespectful to me. And I didn't think that through. I generally don't react a ton. So what did she get? She got the grunt and the disapproving face,
Mhm.
not any threatening words or, you know, attacks. But still, I could have been like, hey, don't make it about me. Like, is it appropriate for her to treat me that way? Absolutely not. Is it understandable? Yes. Can I be a big enough, you know, person and parent to let that roll off my back? Yeah, I need to be. And if I would have been thinking, hey, you know, this is the day, this is likely to be the behavior, here's how I want to respond, I probably could have like enacted my own plan and functioned better. But that same, it still applies like this weekend and Monday coming up is probably going to be more of the same because they're going to be tired and it's going to be a long weekend with soccer practice and
Mhm.
scrimmage and new stuff. So just think through how do you want to be in the car when they're not talking? How do you want to be at home when they're grunting at you or they're acting like you're the problem? Plan for that so you actually can be the kind of parent you want to be versus react and it's like flipping a coin. You know, we'll see how it goes. And like, oh, you're tired and stressed. You're probably not going to respond well. Versus, I'm going to practice not being offended and just saying, hey, they're overwhelmed. I want to I want them to know that they're going to get through this and I don't want to contribute to it or add to it by my own energy.
Mhm.
So even if you need to like remove yourself from the room, go take a quick walk and do some breathing exercises or review your intentions or whatever. It's a great idea versus adding to their turmoil.
Yeah. And then we can probably do this for our entire lives, really, right? Just
Yeah.
in any
It,
situation,
same stuff
any
over
right?
and over
It really is.
I mean, we're going to continue to talk about mindfulness every
Right.
time
That's all I thought of was mindfulness when you were
is to
saying it.
say,
Okay.
well, hold on, what are you really reacting to? Like, and have you really thought this through? What kind of person do you really want to be? What kind of parent, you know, mom or dad do you really want to be in
Mhm.
this situation? And you're like, well, I don't want to be reactive. I don't want to act like a teenager and fire some insult back and be snotty. You
Mhm.
know, what was mine like? Well, I was like, you know, I did this like, oh God, get away from me. That's childish. And that's not who I want to be. And she remembered it. Like it was obviously it made a big enough impression at 5 o'clock last night. She's like, hey dad, just so you know, like that face and that noise like doesn't help.
Right.
And I so desperately wanted to like defend myself and be
Yeah.
justified, like, well, you were being a little shit.
Yeah.
But that's not helpful or mature. And what the mature thing is to say, you're right, that I can see how that's not helpful.
Yeah.
Um, I'd love to hear how you're gonna like not do your thing, but let's first get to like what could I do? And what would be helpful and what is there a safe word? And so that's when she came up with pickle. Um, and we can do a safe word too, right? It's like if our kids know we're in a triggered space or we're elevated and we use this safe word, uh, I don't know how likely it is that they'll give it that space, but it's, you know, possible to
Mhm.
say, hey, pickle, like, oh yeah, pickle is like when people need a break. Don't
Right.
push. And I would say err on the side of giving your kids that space. If they abuse it repeatedly, you might need to adjust it, but don't react like because they've used it a few times. Like you want to encourage that behavior of self-aware and advocating for space to recover. And you can do a check-in, like, hey, just checking in. Like you used pickle. Are you ready to talk yet?
Mhm.
And most of the time, kids like get some food, go to their room, listen to music, watch something dumb on their phone, talk to some friends. In a while, they've probably calmed down. They can talk through their day or why the morning went the way it went.
Mhm.
But it's similar parenting tips every time. Like, all right, well, don't be an idiot and just react, think it through, take deep breaths, ground yourself in the kind of parent you want to be versus this triggered space that you find yourself in. If you don't know what to say, don't say anything at all. Just be there, be calm. If you can put your hand on their shoulder or their back or give them a nice rub where they're not offended, do it because it grounds us and calms us and it does to for them and it connects us. So really, the same de-escalation kind of tips. Use the environment. Hey, should we listen to some fun music on the way home or a funny podcast? Do
Yeah.
you want music or do you want silence? Do you want to be the DJ on the way home? Listen to this funny like podcast I heard today, or instead of like, tell me about your school schedule and all the things that happen. Like,
Mhm.
was that what you want to do right after work?
Right.
Give me the rundown of your whole work day and like, what did you learn? It's like, leave me alone. Like, I need a break.
Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned it in the de-escalation podcast, but a friend mentioned it. He just listened to it, and the way he described it was hilarious. He said, "Oh, I listened to that podcast, and I've been telling my wife for years she needs to take a breath before she talks to the kids." And it was just hilarious. And
Oh,
I was like, he was pretty worked up about it, but
yeah,
I
the
was like,
irony.
yeah, the irony and just that. But yeah, I think just taking a simple breath at all times, just
I
like,
know. What do you think you're
okay,
teaching
what
your
do you
kid?
and then just, give them that space, right? And
Yeah,
and create that space
yeah.
with just a simple breath
I was meeting with some parents this week, and they were talking about their middle schooler and how many problems he's having and challenging it is. And we started to like kind of sift through some of the examples. And I didn't have to point any fingers. I just asked a lot of questions. And it quickly became apparent that their own energy was a major problem and that their worry and their intentionality and intensity was stressing their son out.
Yeah.
And so I said, you need to think you can gift them energy and you're always modeling something. And I asked them, like, what have you been modeling to your son about how to handle life? And they both just like got this like super guilty face on. I'm
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, it's been our fault.
Yeah.
Literally, it was like, oh my gosh, it's our fault.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, it's probably not all their fault, but like, yeah, you probably added a lot of stress by your own energy and not being aware of like, what are you giving off when you drive around? What energy you're giving off when you come in to wake them up or you remind them for the fourth time to put their things away or get their backpack ready. Like if you're teaching urgency and anxiety and anger, they're absorbing that. Maybe unconsciously, sometimes consciously. And that's the last thing you want to teach them is to like freak out over
Mhm.
your mornings. Like that's not a habit you want to absorb. You want to say, hey, the day is going to be, it's going to go the way it's going to go. Can I manage it better with this and that? Yeah, let's talk about that. But let's not start off the day like already believing like the clock is a bomb that's going to go off and then instill in them like that level of stress. It's absorbed over and over and over again. So like parents feel empowered to gift your kids the desirable traits that you want, but you do that by dialing it in yourself
Mhm.
and taking those deep breaths and acting like, school starting at 8:05 is not uh, a nuclear bomb. Like, yeah, let's get there because it's better, but let's also like enjoy the sunshine and like we get to listen to music and we have food in the fridge. Like, let's not overreact to the situation.
Yeah.
And then maybe in the weekend, you review the routine and dial in, like, I don't feel like we're set up to succeed. We're not getting up early enough. And we can make lunches the night before. Let's plan that. But in the morning, reacting and freaking out is common, but it's silly.
Mhm.
It's kind of ignorant that you're like, well, why are you doing this now though? Like this isn't a good way to teach it.
So basically, you're saying it's always apparent what's being modeled,
Well, I don't want to say always. But what is modeled is always going to be the parent.
but it's apparent that
Are
it's apparent.
you're not always just say it. Just say it. It's the parent. Uh, I, I mean, I can't think of like a percentage, but I would like something like 90%.
Yeah,
It feels right to me to say 90% of who your child is and becomes is because of your parenting.
yeah,
I mean, it's a gigantic influence and source. Now, there's been some data that says the parents' influence is not that much based on maybe study traits or income producing potential in the future. And I wouldn't doubt that. But overall energy and demeanor of how you live, mom and
hmm
dad's way of living is huge in terms of influencing like how they process life. So
yeah,
gift them calmness by practicing being calm yourself, even if you're faking it. It still
mhm,
works. It's still that's the energy that will be given off is the perceived energy.
yeah. So, news alert, parents, it's all on you. Don't screw it up,
Yeah.
as we know.
There is a lot of
A
responsibility.
lot of responsibility, which is why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
because
should be pretty good. You don't need to be great,
we're all gonna learn it together.
not
We're all
perfect,
figuring it out
just
together.
pretty good.
Pretty good.
And pretty good is you're making strides, you're being aware, and you're
Mhm.
saying, hey, I screwed up. Sorry.
Yeah,
I shouldn't have done that. I can do that better. Here's what I'm going to try.
yeah.
So
Well, welcome back to school,
yeah.
everybody,
Take a
parents,
nap,
kids alike.
have a snack in your pocket,
Yeah,
be gracious, take a walk, be
yeah,
nice to your teachers.
hmm
Don't read all the emails though. It's too many.
yeah,
Adjust expectations to be realistic, not idealistic, and set intentions for who you want to be in the situations that you know are likely to come that are your most challenging.
hmm and give your kids a little space, right?
Yeah,
With a breath,
absolutely.
with a snack,
Don't
with
force it.
whatever
Don't
it may
force
be.
it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Joshua,
Thanks,
for
Dan.
the tidbits as always.
Yeah,
And
thanks for listening, parents.
yeah,
Love that you guys are here.
and have a successful, wonderful start to the school year.
Yeah,
Go get them, kiddos, and more importantly, go get them, parents.
go get 'em.
Be pretty good parents. All right, we'll see you on the next episode.